first, let's talk a little bit about the sports card investment report, because I put out some content today, actually, for members only. So the first 2 members only articles went out today, and I'm excited. I put a lot of time into them. It normally only takes me like a couple hours to write an article, to be honest, but because I just keep a lot of information in my brain, and then just when I get a chance to put it all out there, it doesn't take me that long. But these particular articles took a few days to write. And one of the reasons it took a few days to write is because of the game 7s, right? We didn't know what was going to happen with Giannis versus Tatum. I know a lot of people are invested in those guys, and we didn't know what was going to happen with Booker and Chris Paul versus Luka. So you had this big shakeup at the top of the sports card investment report. And so now we've got Steph number 1, Tatum number 2, Luka number 3. This is overall. We moved Giannis down to number 4. We've got some other sport athletes in between him and Ja, who's at number 9. And then we actually moved Anthony Edwards to the next NBA player. He's at number 12. So we've got some baseball players in between him and
not
Ja.
even a playoff guy.
Right. Not even in the playoffs. And then you've got Devin Booker at 15. So I kind of want to explain this as to what I did here, because I think that, and this is going to be an interesting discussion topic that has more to do than just me talking about the investment report. But first, I kind of want to get this out of the way. Mm-hmm. So to me, this is going to change multiple more times between now and the end of June. And I think that you have to move. I think Steph has to move to number 1 because he's a GOAT and he's active and he's still in the NBA playoffs. So to me, it kind of like defaults Steph. With Giannis being out, he's now down to number 4, but because he's still number 4 because he's still Giannis and he was our number 1. And so one playoff elimination doesn't change who he is as a player, but I feel like you have to move him down because there's one less huge marker that he can hit now. And so that's the rationale for moving Giannis down, and then moving
in the short term,
Tatum and Luka into 2 and 3. Yeah. And this is like, I want to also have a discussion around the term investment, because our new friend and member Paul Fisher of the Sports Card Investment Report brought up to me kind of the definition of how he sees investment, right? Mm-hmm. The way that I see investment is that kind of define it as any time you spend any amount of money on anything with any kind of plan, short term, intermediate term, long term, it's an investment. So to me, you can still go out and buy Tatum and Luka if you think they're going to win the NBA championship, or if you think they're at least going to advance to the next round. Now, that's a hard call to make because Luka's got a tough series against the Warriors and Tatum has to face the Heat. So I still think they're number 2 and number 3 because they still project out to be long-term, but now they have the marker that Giannis and Ja and Booker don't have anymore. And so we've moved Chris Paul down quite a bit. We've moved Booker down quite a bit. But this is going to change, right? Because we're going to reassess at the end of the NBA. We're going to actually reassess at the end of each series. So I think that kind of gets that out of the way. But what I want to ask you about next for the NBA playoff takeaways, I think some other shows are probably just going to regurgitate sales before something happened and sales after something happened. But what I want to talk about is a little bit more strategic than that. Okay. I want to talk about the definition of the term investment, first of all. And I want to talk about sort of timing the market with these guys and expectations related to like buying in right now. Sort of ranking them is hard because you have to add the context around. If I'm going to move Tatum and Luka up that much, I'm basically saying like you can buy them right now, but buying them right now is a huge risk. So it actually, in some respects, makes more sense to buy guys like Anthony Edwards right now, or guys like even Kyrie Irving right now because their seasons are over. So I think it's important to have a discussion around this concept of like, is it healthy to make sports card investments at this point in time, using basketball as an example? And you could use any sport as an example, but in mid-May, is it healthy to predict who's going to win the NBA championship when there's still 4 teams remaining and anybody can still win it, and go out and spend an exorbitant amount of money on a player's card? And I know you bought Jason Tatum a while back. So maybe you can weave that into this discussion around, okay,
Yeah.
we talk a lot on this show about you want to be holding the guy well before something can happen in terms of a marker. And then you want to have a plan for that guy. The last thing I'll say before I let you talk is I did write quite a bit in the Sports Card Investment Report premium version about when to sell guys like Devin Booker. And it is a little bit of a failsafe, but I think that time can get away from us. We think that our guy's going to win game 7, but we have to think what happens if he doesn't win game 7? You know, I think our
Mm-hmm.
plan can get blown up on a guy like Devin Booker because we think he's
Mm-hmm.
going to win game 7. But when he doesn't win game
Mm-hmm.
7, what are we doing? Now we have to rethink our plan. Now we're thinking, okay, I got to hold this guy. Am I going to hold him another year? Am I going to hold him to the next All-Star break? Am I going to hold him to the beginning of next NBA season? When am I going to sell him? Am I going to hold him forever? So what are your thoughts? I
Mm-hmm.
know this is me kind of word vomiting at you to start the show.
Yeah.
But I think that that's the kind of conversation I want to have around the NBA, and you can really apply it to any sport during sort of the playoff run, right?
Yeah, I think the longer that we've gone about this and done this together, I think about, okay, just so Giannis, we'll take Giannis for example. Last week we talked about best investment out there, basically we were just like, Giannis is the GOAT potentially, like if he materializes, blah, blah, blah. And then, the next week we've got him at 4 because of his playoff series loss. And so I'm just like, in my head, I'm thinking, okay, I actually think that would now put him higher, because like
Mm-hmm.
for me, I'm looking at a dollar cost average, right? And so like when there's a massive hit in something that I'm potentially investing in long term, I'm thinking, okay, where is my dollar going to run the most? And so I think, okay, I'm going to put so for me, now I'm thinking Steph would be further down on my list right now because everyone is like Steph, 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 Steph. For instance, Luka. I would think like if I'm a guy who's trying to swing trade cards, if I put it that way, then I would say, okay, Tatum is a buy right now. You know, or not Tatum, sorry. Giannis is a buy right now, but a hold for Tatum and Luka and Steph. But I still think there's a lot of room in Tyler Hero's cards because so many people were so down on him for a long time. And before the season started, people were absolutely dogging on Tyler Hero. And now he's back into this spotlight, and the Heat have a legitimate chance to go to an NBA Finals. I don't think they'll get through the Celtics. I think the Celtics end up taking the East here. But I think for me personally, I think it ends up being Golden State versus the Celtics, and then I actually think Celtics will win that series as well. They're just too hot right now. I think the Bucks were my prediction to win, so if they beat the Bucks, in my mind, they can beat anybody. So, but in terms of long-term projections and in terms of when you're in a playoff series, I actually would just say you need to be preparing before that. Like you need to be preparing in the season or right before the playoffs start, or even actually before the season starts in the off season beforehand. So, like now would be a great time to capitalize on some of those bets that we made early on in the season. Capitalize on those Tatum cards and capitalize on potentially like, if you dip down in the Celtics far enough when you went like Jaylen Brown, or you went that kind of, if you invested in some of those marginal Celtics, you need to get out. I think that's my perspective in terms of an investor. You need to be selling right now. So if I was to just do Kendall's investment report, the guys that are being more successful, I actually would pull down on the list for a long-term buy. So like they're kind of like in that long-term section, but in the short term, I would be buying the guys that just fell off and like everyone's trying to dump. So that's my thought.
Yeah. Yeah, that's interesting. And so I'm trying to add, we know that the sports card investment report is kind of built around rankings. And so
Mm-hmm.
what I want to try to do within the write-ups is add as much context as I can. And then that's one of the reasons why I've added the members only content, is because I want to add, you know, kind of some really just some sell now, buy now type of content related to the
Yeah,
report, because looking at the rankings, you don't always get that. Like somebody who just comes to nooffseason.com and just peruses the
sure.
rankings might think that I'm trying to tell them
The
that,
play would be the
you know,
most important part of the article.
yeah, the play is the most important part of every article. And so, some people might think like I want them to buy Luka over Giannis, and that's not necessarily the case. I think where it relates on a day by day basis is like maybe the people who play FanDuel and DraftKings, and they might want to
Sure.
place a bet on Luka or place a bet on Tatum because they're still in it. And so I kind of think of it that way too, where it's like, okay, well, putting
If you're
together
gonna
the fact
take a
that
bet
Luka
right
and
now,
Tatum,
if you're gonna
yeah,
take a bet right now, just take Al Horford rebounds. It's
yeah,
worked all season.
yeah, that's a good bet. There's probably a lot of solid prop bets within each of these games that make a lot of sense. But I think
Yeah.
like marrying together the fact that like you could say Tatum is pretty close to Giannis, or you could say Luka's pretty close to Giannis. He doesn't have the MVPs and he doesn't have the championship, which I guess is a contradictory statement. But you could say age-wise, you could say, things can materialize over the next couple of years. So in theory, like they're not that far apart. But yeah, for the record, I do want to say like I still moving Giannis down to number 4 momentarily basically just means that there is a chance that Tatum and Luka's cards, and even Steph, even Tyler Hero, even you know uh, other guys on the Warriors or Mavs potentially will see a large. Like I'm listing a Draymond Green card. This is a good example. I'm going to list a Draymond Green card now because I'm looking at Draymond Green, and we talked about him maybe being a Hall of Famer. But
Yeah.
the dude's like never going to be in the spotlight more than he's going to be in the spotlight over the next like probably 10 to 15 days. He's just
Mm-hmm.
not. And so
Mm-hmm.
he's going to get more views on his YouTube channel. He's going to get like more
Mm-hmm.
interviews. He's going to get more features on Sports Center because of this series. And then if they make it to the finals, it's going to be even crazier. So, but my thought is I'm going to be safe and list now, because if I don't list Draymond Green now, that card it's a rookie auto, and I don't know when the next time that thing could get as high as it would
Oh,
potentially
yeah,
get right
absolutely.
now. So that's
The
kind
only
of
time
like
that I
that's
could
the
think that it
example of
would
what I'm
get,
trying to say for all of these guys.
yeah, the only time I think it could get a little bit larger than that is if the Warriors beat the Mavs and he's in the finals 15 days after this, like, and so no matter what,
Right.
this next 15 to 30 day window is probably your gold prime time to get on this Draymond sell. So yeah, I think that's perfect
Yeah.
sell.
So I kind of want to know from people in the comments, or join the Facebook group by going to sportscardstrategy.com and click the link to join the Facebook group. I kind of want to know from everybody, like, what are you guys all doing related to what Kendall and I are talking about? Like, are you
Yeah.
are you like hoarding Tatum cards like for the long term? If so, why are you? Or are you like what's your strategy related to this? Like, are you on board? Because Kendall and I are in sync, to be clear. Like, we want to acquire guys that could have these playoff moments far ahead of time, and then we want to
Mm-hmm.
sell safely while they're having moments, not trying to wait for like the biggest moment. Because if you wait for the biggest moment, like we just saw with Booker, like that could be gone in an instant, or with
Yep.
Giannis, that could be
Yep.
gone in an instant. So I think that we need
Man,
to,
Booker
and then also
Booker and Paul
secondly,
just crapped their pants.
yeah,
It
and
was
like,
so
and now
bad.
what do you even do with Chris Paul's like another topic. Like him and James Harden, I moved them way down on the report just because I don't like. Now you could argue, okay, maybe you don't move them down on the report because maybe their prices plummet, and now you start to look at, do they come back and have more markers next year? Like I get that, but at the same time, it's like, what are the chances that either one of those two guys actually comes back and becomes like as relevant as they've been in the last few years? And so I think that's where the tie for me on, do I move him down? Do I move him up, like you're saying? Because there's an opportunity to buy.
Right.
Do I keep him kind of in the middle, or do I move him down? The tiebreaker is like, what's the probability they're still going to be that good? You know? And like for a guy like Giannis, I would never move him past 5th overall. And that should say right there, like that's like he's the guy. That should
tell you what he is. Yeah.
That should tell you he's the guy. And so anyway, we can move on from this conversation, but I think it's a good.
Let me ask you
this.